Hello and welcome to today's video on SwiftUI. Today we will be looking on SwiftUI Essentials, building lists and navigation. It is part of the SwiftUI tutorials as part of Apple's developer website. And basically what we're going to build today, we are going to extend our last project's landmark application that displayed the landmark information for a specific landmark, but we are gonna add more landmarks to our project and we're gonna put them in a list, which will allow us to navigate to the details on that specific landmark, and that detail will be our last project UI, as you can see. Okay, so we're gonna set this video up by not going over the tutorial step by step, but rather I'll give you the main ideas on what is needed to learn building lists and navigation in a shorter way than 35 minutes, while still giving you the main concepts of the tutorial. Okay, so let's start off by downloading the project files, which I already have here. What you want to do is go to starting point, go to the landmarks folder, and open up the XCode project. Okay, so far, as you can see on the left side, we are provided with the models folder, which includes a data and landmark Swift file. If you go into the data file, you can tell that we have a function that loads. Well, it's gonna serve as loading JSON into our application. We are not gonna focus on the functionality of this in this tutorial. We're mostly gonna focus on how to build the UI. But what you do need to understand is that we are using this function in order to load the landmark data that they provided as well into our application, and the main thing out of this is that we are putting that information into landmark data in an array of landmarks. And as you can see, if we go into landmark, it's a struct that has all the properties needed in order to download the JSON data. Okay, so as far as that goes, we are gonna start off by creating a row. If we go into our simulator, we're gonna be creating a single row. And to do that, we're gonna go into File, go to New, go to File, and then make sure you select SwiftUI view, click Next, and we are gonna name our file landmark row. Okay, click Create, and here we have our landmark row. We're gonna make sure we have our canvas selected in order to be able to view. I'm gonna make this a little bit bigger in order to view what we currently have. So we hit resume. We can see the view that is being displayed. Hello world. Okay, So we are going to start by adding a property to our struct, and we are going to add the landmark property, which will be of type landmark. Perfect. So of course we have to add the argument landmark, and we are going to use the same landmark data array that we were talking about in order to pass an element from it into our landmark row. So now that we have that, what we want is to display the name of the landmark, and to do so we are going to access the name property in our landmark like that. So this should, let's hit resume. This should display the first element's name. Okay. What we want to do now is embed our text view into a horizontal stack, which will allow us to use more views. We want the image of the landmark to be displayed on the left side, so we are gonna use landmark dot image, and so now we can see the image view that displays the landmarks image, and what we want is to resize that. To do that, we're going to use resizable, and we are going to update the frames of the image to have the width of 50 and height of 50, and we don't need alignment, so we're going to remove that. So as you can see, the image is resized. Now what we want is to push both views to the left. So a way of doing that is by adding spacing to the right of both views by using spacer. And here we have the row, what we want it to look like. So this is done. We are now moving on to making the list. To make the list, we're going to create a new file. And name the file landmark list. Okay. What we want to do is to make a list of all of our landmarks inside of our landmark data array. And to do so, there is one requirement that has to be done in order for our landmarks to be displayed inside the list. And that is, let's go to landmarks, inside our models. Landmark has to conform to the protocol identifiable. Okay, like so. This is what is going to allow us to display it inside the list. So let's go back to the list. We don't need a text view, so we're going to remove that. But now we are going to add a list view, and inside the list we are going to use data, which we will be the landmark data array. Let's move this, and we are going to name the elements inside of our landmark data landmark. Okay, so let's display the names of our landmarks so we can see if it's working by putting them inside a text view. Let's hit resume. And as you can see, we have a list. Let's go into our live preview. So as you can see, we have a list of the names of all of our landmarks, and let's hit resume. And it's scrollable. Sorry, that took a while. Okay. So what we want instead is to display the rows that we just created. And to do that, we are going to do landmark row. And inside of our landmark row, we're going to use the landmarks that we are passing from our landmark data array. So as you can see again, it's showing the rows that we just created, and it's using the properties of all the landmarks that we have in our array. In order to navigate into a detail view, once we click the elements inside of our array, we have to use a navigation view. So we're going to embed our list into a navigation view, and we are going to use a navigation link. This is what's going to create the button for us to transition into the detail view, which we want it to be landmark detail. So we're going to do navigation link, and inside of our navigation link, we want the destination to be landmark detail, and let's move this. So our destination argument is landmark detail, and what this should do is it's going to create these navigation buttons, and once we click it, it's going to trigger the landmark detail. So it's going to display the landmark detail information that we have in our Swift file. The only thing is that our landmark detail information is hard-coded. So for all of them, it's gonna display Turtle Rock. To fix that, we are gonna go into landmark detail, and we are going to use a property called, again, landmark of type landmark. Of course, we have to pass that argument into by using the landmark data. We're gonna use whichever element we want, in this case the third element, and we want to remove all of this hard-coded information, including the image and the map location. So we're going to start off by changing the name from hard-coded into the actual landmark name. let's hit resume. And as you can see, we have an error. Let's hit the information button, and it's telling us that it's missing an argument. So let's go fix that. And the problem is inside of our list. When we are navigating into our landmark detail, we want to include the argument of landmark from our landmark data. So that should fix that. Let's see if there's something else. Okay, so in our scene delegate, we want the initial view or the root view to be landmark list, like so. And we're gonna hit resume, and we're gonna go back into our landmark detail. Now, as you can see, instead of having hard-coded data, we are modifying it with our landmark properties. So we're going to do the same thing to our park information. Instead of using hard-coded data, we're going to use landmark dot park, and for California we're going to do landmark dot state. Okay, so as you can see, all of the information is being updated when we hit resume. So now, in order to modify the image, we have to go into the circle image. And in order to not have it hard-coded, we're gonna add the same property, landmark, of type landmark, and what we want is to, let's first add the argument. That's from landmark data, and we can choose whichever element we want. We are going to use the landmark image. Okay, let's hit resume to see what happens. And we have an error from our landmark detail. So all we are missing is the landmark information, which will be this property up here, landmark. Let's hit resume, and this image should now be updated with landmarks 3, the third element. Okay, so let's do the same to our map view. You can hit command, click, and jump to definition. And what we want is to add the same property, landmark. Okay, so let's add the argument again. It doesn't matter which one, but all we have to do is remove these coordinates and use the ones provided from our struct. Okay, so we have to go back to our detail, and before it complains, we have to add Well, first we have to save this file, and then we have to add the argument. So if we hit resume, and if we hit the live preview button, we can see our location is being updated as well. So let's go to landmark list. And this is our final part of the project completed. So let's test it out. We have the rows. It's scrollable. We have that list of elements. And if we want to see the detail of a specific landmark, all we have to do is click on the element, and it takes us to that detail of that specific landmark. So if we go back, we choose another one, both the image and the text along with the location is being modified. So here we are. We have completed the tutorial. Thank you for watching the video, and stay updated for the next video. Thank you.